Hey cookie creators and lovers alike, I'm Gabby. It's Halloween and today on the Cool Cookie Show, we're working on our tricks and treats. For my witch trick-or-treater, I've gone along with the food coloring marker and marked some guidelines for my piping. I'm going to start by flooding the black part of her dress. For my piping consistency icing, I'll be using a number 1 Ateco tip. And for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'll also be using a number 1 Ateco tip. Now I'll let this layer dry for about 20 minutes to an hour before I go in and flood the other surfaces. Now I'll let these layers dry for about 20 minutes to an hour before I go in and add some more detail. While I let the witch's hands and shirt dry, I'm going to add some frills to the front of the dress using lime green. For this technique, I'll be using a 102 Wilton tip. Now I'll let this layer dry for about 20 minutes to an hour before I go in with some more flooding and piping detail. Now I'll flood the face with the same skin tone as I did the hands. Before the flooded layer dries though, I'm going to drop in some candy eyeballs. Now I'll let these layers dry for a good 6 to 12 hours before I go in and finish the rest of the piping detail. I'm going to give the witch's belt a little bling by using some purple sanding sugar. Now I'll let these layers dry for about 20 minutes to an hour before I go finish up some detail on the hat and the face. Now we'll use a food coloring marker to finish off her nose. This witch is ready to skip the tricks and get right to the treats. For my jack-o'-lantern, I'm going to start by lighting up his face. So I've got some yellow piping consistency icing, and I'm going to smooth it out with a smoothing knife. I'll let this layer set for about 5 to 10 minutes before I go in with some flooding. Now that the yellow layer has had some time to dry, let's go in and shape a face and flood the base of the cookie orange. For my piping consistency icing, I'll be using a number 1 Ateco tip, and for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'll be using a number 3 Wilton tip. Now we'll let this layer dry for about 20 minutes to an hour before we go in and flood the stem. This jack-o'-lantern's all done and ready to light the trick-or-treaters' way. For our second trick-or-treater, let's go with the mummy. I'm going to start by flooding the entire surface white. For my piping consistency icing, I'll be using a number 1 Ateco tip, and for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'll be using a number 3 Wilton tip. Now we'll let this layer dry for 6 to 12 hours before we go in with some piping detail and some candy eyeballs. Now I'll go over the mummy cookie with the Wilton 44 tip in order to give the illusion of wrapping. Now we'll finish off our mummy by giving him some eyeballs. This little trick-or-treater is all wrapped up. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Cool Cookie Show. If you liked this episode, give it a big thumbs up. Want to be a part of the creativity? Let me know what characters and shapes you'd like to see in the comments below. For more of my cookie creations, check out my channel, tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. Till next time, stay sweet!